There is a saying that people don't fail because they aimed too high and missed. They fail because they aimed too low and hit. That's the truth sitting at the heart of The Magic of Thinking Big book by Dr. David J. Schwartz. Today we're going to break down the 6 core concepts that make this book so powerful, and I'm going to give you 3 concrete actions you can start using today to rewire the way you think about yourself and your future. Stay with me to the end because the final concept is the one most people skip, and it might be the most important one of all. So, who was David Schwartz and why should we listen to him? The author David Schwartz wasn't a billionaire or a celebrity. He was a professor, a coach, and a deeply practical thinker. He spent decades studying what separated people who achieved extraordinary things from those who didn't. And what he found wasn't talent, it wasn't luck, it wasn't even hard work. It was the size of their thinking. He concluded that the level of your success is almost always determined by the size of your belief, not your circumstances, not your background, your belief. Let's get into the 6 concepts. So, the first concept, believe you can succeed and you will. Schwartz breaks this up with a real psychological argument. He says that genuine belief, deep belief, acts like a mental green light. When you truly believe something is possible, your mind goes to work finding ways to make it happen. When you don't believe it's possible, your mind goes to work building the case for why it won't happen. Think about that for a second. Your brain is constantly working. The question is it working for you or against you? Schwartz makes a distinction that most people miss. There's a difference between intellectual belief and a deep belief. You can tell yourself, I believe I can do this, while your subconscious is screaming the opposite. Real belief shows up in your actions, your language, and how you carry yourself. He also points out something counterintuitive. You don't need certainty to build belief. You build belief through evidence gathering. Small wins stack up to build confidence. Confidence compounds. The more you act like success is possible, the more your brain starts to accept it as the default. So, here's the first action we can take, a belief audit. Grab a piece of paper and write down what goal you say you want, but secretly don't believe you can achieve. Then, write 3 pieces of evidence from your own life that suggest you could do it. Not evidence from other people, from yours. This is how you start building real belief rather than borrowed motivation. So, do this today, don't skip it. Let's look at concept 2. Cure yourself of excuses. Schwartz gives this failure habit a brilliant name, Excusitis, the chronic disease of making excuses. And he says it's the single biggest reason capable people never reach their potential. He identifies 4 strains of the illness: health excuses, I would, but my health isn't great. Schwartz points out that many of the world's most prolific achievers across business, art, and science have worked through serious physical limitations. The body is more resilient than the excuse suggests. Intelligence excuses. I'm not smart enough. This one is particularly destructive. Schwartz argues that above a base level of functioning intelligence, raw IQ is far less important than attitude, persistence, and the willingness to keep thinking. Most successful people aren't geniuses. They're consistent thinkers with strong belief systems. Age excuses. I'm too young or I'm too old. He dismantles both. Too young, start anyway. You'll grow into it. Too old, the research consistently shows that it's never too late to begin something meaningful. Luck excuses. Other people just get lucky, people say. Schwartz reframes this. Luck tends to follow action. People who are lucky are usually people who created more opportunities, they showed up more, tried more, and put themselves in more positions to catch a break. The cure: radical ownership. Stop explaining why not. Start asking how. How can you do this? Concept 3. Building confidence and destroy fear. Fear is the other side of the belief coin, and Schwartz dedicates serious attention to it. His core argument is that fear isn't something that happens to you, it's something you rehearse. Most fear is manufactured in the mind through repetitive negative visualization. We replay worst case scenario on loop as inevitable reality. He introduces the concept of action as the antidote. Fear grows when you avoid things. It shrinks when you move toward it. Every time you do the thing you're afraid of, even imperfectly, you interrupt the fear cycle and build a small deposit of courage. Schwartz also talks about fear of other people's opinions. He argues that most people are far too worried about what others think, and that is a particularly sneaky form of small thinking. The cure is to ask yourself, in 5 years, will this person's opinion matter to my life? Usually the answer is no. He encourages readers to deliberately put themselves in uncomfortable situations, to speak up in meetings, to introduce themselves first, to volunteer for the harder task, not because it feels good, but because it rewires your self-concept. Now, here's a second action that you can take. The 24-hour fear sprint identity. One thing you've been putting off because of fear of judgment, failure, or embarrassment. Send the email, make the call, post the thing you're dreading, record the video. You don't have to do it perfectly, you just have to do it within the next 24 hours. Write in the comments what you're going to do. Accountability accelerates action. Now, here's concept 4, how to think big, the actual mechanics. Here's where the book really starts to deliver practical gold. Schwartz is clear that thinking big isn't about delusion or denial, it's about scale of vision. He argues the most people dramatically underestimate what they are capable of over a long period of time and dramatically overestimate how different successful people are from them. I think this is very true. I always imagine successful people like Aliko Dangote or Mark Cuban to be so different from myself, but maybe they aren't too different. He gives several practical techniques for actually expanding your thinking. Use big, positive language. The words you use shape your reality. People who habitually use words like impossible, can't, never, too hard, are programming their minds for limitation. People who use possible, how might I, what if, and eventually are programming for expansion. This isn't word magic, it's neurology. Your brain takes its cues from your language. Stretch your vision of the future. Schwartz asks readers to think further out. Not just next week or next year, but 5 to 10 years. When you give your mind a longer runway, it naturally starts thinking bigger. Short-term thinking produces small solutions. Long-term thinking produces bold ones. Look for the bigger picture in every situation. When you're facing a problem, ask yourself, am I seeing this as small as it feels or as big as it actually is? Most of the time, the problems that feel catastrophic in the moment are genuinely minor in the context of a full life. Surround yourself with big thinkers. Your mental environment matters enormously. Schwartz says the people around you either expand or contract your thinking. Small thinkers make you feel foolish for dreaming. Big thinkers make you feel foolish for not dreaming. That's a key distinction. Choose your inner circle carefully. Now, let's look at concept 5, how to think and dream creatively. Schwartz argues that creative thinking isn't a talent you're born with, it's a habit you develop. And the cornerstone of that habit is asking better questions. Most people approach problems with the question, why won't this work? Big thinkers approach problems with, how might this work? That single shift in framing opens up entirely different neural pathways. He introduces what he calls the how can I do better mindset, a perpetual dissatisfaction with the status quo, not from a place of anxiety, but from a genuine curiosity about improvement. He argues that the most creative people aren't necessarily the most intelligent, they're the most curious and the most willing to challenge assumptions. Schwartz also makes a compelling case for solitude as a creative tool. He noticed that the most effective thinkers in business, science, and the arts regularly carved out time to just think, not consume, not react, not respond, just think. He called this thinking time and treated it as sacred. In a world of infinite distraction and constant input, this idea is more radical now than it was back when the book first came out. He also warns against the creativity killer he calls average person thinking, defaulting to what everyone else is doing simply because it feels safe. He challenges readers to ask, what would the bold choice be here? Not reckless, but genuinely brave. Which brings us on to action number 3. Schedule a thinking session. Block 30 minutes this week. Literally put it in your calendar with no phone, no screen, no input, just a notebook and a question you want to answer. It could be about your career, a business idea, a relationship, a problem you haven't solved. Let your mind work without interruption. This is what Schwartz called the most underused success tool available to every person alive. Try it once, you'll be shocked what comes up. Now, let's look at concept 6. You are what you think you are. Your self-image is everything. This is the one people skip, and it's arguably the most important concept in the entire book. Schwartz argues that your self-image, the internal picture you hold of who you are, is the operating system that everything else runs on. Your habits, your relationships, your ambitions, and your results, they all flow from this one source file. Here's the uncomfortable bit. Most people's self-image was written by someone else. A parent who told you not to get too big for your boots, a teacher who said you weren't academic, maybe a rejection that you turned into an identity, a failure that you made permanent. Schwartz says you have to actively, deliberately rewire that image, not with affirmations you don't believe, but with consistent behavior that sends new evidence to your subconscious about who you are. He talks about dressing, speaking, and acting like the person you want to become. Not as performance, but as rehearsal. Every time you behave in alignment with your aspirational self-image, you deposit a small piece of evidence that this is who I am. Over time, the new image solidifies. He also makes a point about how you introduce yourself, about the pride and ownership you take in what you do. People who describe themselves and their work with energy and belief project a very different self-image than those who minimize or apologize. And the world largely takes you at your own valuation. The most powerful question in this section of the book, would the person I want to become do this? That single question applied consistently is a compass that points you in the right direction, and almost every time. So, what these 6 concepts have in common? Let's zoom out. Belief, excuses, fear, big thinking, creativity, and self-image. Notice what's absent from that list. There's no chapter on hustle culture, no section on optimizing your morning routine, no advice on productivity hacks or life admin. Schwartz was pointing at something deeper. He was saying, fix the inner architect first, and the outer results will follow. Most self-help books work from the outside in. Change your habits, change your life. Schwartz worked from the inside out. Change your thinking, change everything. The battle between small thinking and big thinking is real, arguably more so because we now have more distractions, more comparisons, and more reasons to feel inadequate than ever before. So I want to leave you with one question that I think captures the entire spirit of this book. Am I thinking as big as the life I actually want requires? Ask yourself that. Not bigger than is realistic, not bigger than you can justify, just big enough. Big enough for the life you actually want to live. Most of us are thinking too small, not because we're lazy or weak, but because small thinking is safe and big thinking feels exposed. It feels like setting yourself up to be laughed at, to fail publicly, to want something you might not get. But Schwartz's argument, backed by decades of observation, is that the regret of thinking small is always heavier than the risk of thinking big. If this video was useful, hit subscribe because we go deep on books like this to help give takeaway lessons that we can all learn from. Drop a comment with which of the 6 concepts hits hardest for you. I'd love to know. So remember, design your profits first and your spend second. I'll see you in the next one.